Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. Like, it's awesome to be able to have this plan, but to have a community around us who is here to listen to what we're doing, but also to help pray for us is a huge thing. And so we greatly appreciate it. Hopefully, we don't know, like, we know what we're going there to do, but we don't exactly know what that's going to look like. So flexibility is the name of the game, and that's what we are hoping to, just go with open hands, ready for the Lord to work through us, to work for us to work alongside them. So we're excited. If you notice the dates, it is actually exactly a month away that we will be headed out to Alaska. We are flying from Boston to Seattle, then from Seattle up to Anchorage. And we'll get into more of that later, how the Lord's work with that. But it's super exciting to be able to have this opportunity. So I'm going to share a little bit about what our initial plans are, and then I'm going to give my testimony. Eric's going to share some stuff, and then we'll have questions at the end. So if anything pops into your head, you might want to write it down, unless you have a really good memory, so that you have that towards the end. But we are traveling to Iliamna. That is where the Houts are from. You do have to go on a tiny little plane to get to Iliamna, so we will fly into Anchorage, but then we'll have to take a small plane all the way to Iliamna. Thankfully, all 8 of us will fit on that plane, so they say, together. Not sure if our luggage will actually fit with us, too, so that might come later. We'll see. It should be good, but this is a picture from Aaron's website, and he does a lot of, his ministry that he's training for is aviation. So the hearts with the little planes, that's why, because that's kind of what they're training to do. This is their most recent picture. This was in their most recent update. It's Aaron, Rachel, their eldest daughter's Anna, then James, Malia, and the new one is Abigail. So we're excited to go and visit them. I was thinking today, the weather outside, this is like a good day in Alaska on a summer day. So it really kind of made me get into the vibes of what Alaska might be. This is their church. As the update said, they recently got a new kitchen and a new roof, which is super exciting. We will be staying in the church, and that'll be a fun experience in and of that. But it is just a small little building in the middle of Iliamna, and we're hoping to be able to do some volleyball outside. Basketball is like a really popular sport, I guess. In the town, they have basketball courts, so hopefully reaching out to the community in that way. This is our team, and these are all from VBS. So I am super excited. Like, we knew that we were going to do VBS, but then once we were able to do VBS here, it kind of gave me an idea of what that might look like. And these teens, if you were here and you got to see them, perform during VBS, they did a fantastic job. So I am super excited to be able to bring their skills to Alaska, and also Stephen and Eric's and Phil's with the fish up in Alaska. So he's in his happy place. So anyway, we're excited to all go and serve however that may be. So we are traveling. We'll be gone for about 10 days. From Boston to Anchorage. Thankfully, we don't have an early morning flight, I don't think. It's 9 or 10, I think, is when we leave. And then we get into Anchorage, I think, by 5 p.m. Super cool story. Quite a few months ago, we were having service here. I think we had a team meeting or something after the service. It was announced from the pulpit about our Alaska missions team. And at the end of the service, this lady comes up to me, and I think she's related to Ramona, right? Yes, she's related to Ramona somehow, and she comes up to me and she says, our family, me and my husband, we have a house in Anchorage, and we would love to house you guys if you need to stay overnight at any point. She was super encouraged just by the not the vibes, but how our family of church people were. As she said, normally when you go to the Northeast, you don't think loving church family. And she said, you could feel that there was the Spirit of the Lord here, essentially is what she said. And she said, I don't think God does anything by mistake. There's no coincidences. She said, I knew that I was supposed to be here today, that sort of thing. So it was just such a cool thing. So we have her contact. We're planning to stay the night at her house when we get there on Wednesday. And then we'll fly out to to Iliamna on Thursday, the 20th. And so then we'll stay there the whole week, and then we'll come back on the following Thursday into Anchorage, and that night at midnight, we're flying back to Boston, essentially. So that's the travel plan as of now. Obviously, we are, the plans, if things get lost or whatever, that is what it is, right? We will bring a change of clothes. We are not wearing these in the airport. Eric said that is a recipe for pickpockets. Not that we have those here, but you never know. So our main objectives going to Alaska is, one, to encourage the Houtses. We're there to kind of just help them and encourage them in whatever way we can. Whether that's caring for their kids or helping them with teens or even just, having meals with them and listening to them. That's the main goal. But then we're also doing the 3-day VBS. So a prayer that you can have is, we're supposed to shrink the 5 days into 3 days, which I kind of have an idea of how that might look, but it still will be a little bit of a challenge. So that'll be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, with us doing the service the Sunday that we're there. So we will be doing the entire service. Eric's giving a message from John 10. We're doing some special music and a few different things. Isabel and I are sharing our testimonies. So that'll be an exciting opportunity. And then we're also hoping to help the Houts family in whatever way they need. They are officially moving in September, so the housing, we might help them with things, we might not. We'll see how that goes. We might help them gather and process game, whether that's fish or a moose or a bear. We'll find out. You will hear later. And then stacking wood, basic stuff that they might need to help with their living there. I did mention we're staying in the church. We're helping to connect with basketball and just kind of being around in the community. The weather is cooler and rainy, so it's perfect for our VBS theme. The weather that is in Ireland is very similar to the weather that's in Alaska, so that is great. We're all bringing our muck boots anyway. We could just wear those as our costume, right? And then we're just anticipating a week of serving alongside the Houtses and seeing how they do their ministry on whatever level that may be. So that is kind of the rough idea. Prayer requests you can be praying for now and also while we're up there is just safety for traveling, that the flights will go well, that we'll be able to get our connecting flight and everything will be smooth. You can also pray for boldness to encourage and help where needed, that we would have insight as to where we can help, and that they would also feel comfortable in asking us to do stuff. I know sometimes it's, if you have a visitor, you don't want to impose on them, but we're there to help. So that is a big goal. Then also opportunities to witness and share the good news, whether that be our testimony or we're able to share the gospel, however that would look, whether that's we're seated by someone on a plane who we can talk to or someone in the community in Iliamna. And then flexibility as the Lord directs our steps, that we would know exactly how to help, and that if things work, they work, and if not, so be it. And then the last one is unity as a team. And we have a great team. I'm excited to get to know everyone even more than we already do. But the devil does like to attack. And so that is one thing that we need as a team, is unity and just the ability to go and help where we can. And this picture was taken just this morning. But this is the whole team together. Unfortunately, we're on our orange shirts, but you can get the picture. So that's essentially what our time up in Alaska is going to look like, and we will share more when we get back for sure. But yeah. So a couple weeks ago when we met as a team, Eric asked if anyone would want to share their testimony. And there's been a couple things, that the Lord's brought into my heart. But that night I went home. Well, I volunteered. I said I would love to. And then I went home, and the Lord allowed me to write everything out. And throughout the last 2 weeks, I've just kind of read over it, gonna try not to cry. But and the Lord just let me kind of sit in it. And He's done a good work in my life and a deep work in my life throughout this last year. And you'll learn more about it. But Psalm 23 has been a huge impact in my life. If you had asked me a couple years ago who I was, I would have told you I was a teacher. I taught for 10 years, and I threw everything I was into teaching for those years. Teaching and my job consumed my life, took up most of my weekends, and honestly gave me the satisfaction I thought was sufficient for a good chunk of those 10 years. Until it didn't. Until I didn't have the capacity to keep going. Until the oil had dried up on what I once thought would be my lifelong assignment, because I had made it my God. So I stepped away from teaching last year because I didn't have the mental, physical, social, or emotional fortitude to keep going. I was, in all honesty, pretty fried and spiritually dead. For most of my life, I've run this race in my strength, thinking if I just gave more, pushed harder, worked longer, then I would be able to hold everything together and be everything to all men. And honestly, for a long while, it kind of looked like I maybe had it all handled from the outside. But the thing is, when you run at that pace in your own strength for long enough, you collapse. And I collapsed hard. I kept moving so I didn't have to stop and think and face some pretty big hurts in my life that I just continued to push down. Being busy helped me feel useful, purpose-filled, and needed. I derived my value from how much I could do and how much people appreciated or didn't appreciate me. I would work hard to feel valued and productive and then go home and numb out to the TV and music in an attempt to keep running the rat race I had created for my life. Noise became a constant companion, so I didn't have to confront the thoughts in my head and the ever-present emotions I continued to push down to the darkest corners of my being. Stepping away really did feel like a relief at first, like I was finally able to breathe after treading water for so long, like I could exhale, and look back in moderate satisfaction on a job completed after a long day's work. And then the reality hit. Who was I? What was I going to do? What had I done? Had I let my team down? Surely I could have just kept going after a couple months of well-earned reprieve. I had what some might call a bit of an identity crisis, because I had built my identity on who I was and not whose I was. I felt purposeless and joyless, searching for meaning in whatever I thought might fill the ever-present void I had created over the years of busyness and numbing. But in the midst of the unknown and unfamiliar, I started going back to once familiar habits, like sitting on our lovely three-season porch and reading devotions, the Bible, and topical books each morning. Because honestly, at that point, what else was there for me to do? God had brought me to the end of myself. And then the emotions I had worked so hard to suppress for years hit, and I was forced to sit with issues, lies, and struggles that had become my truths because I wasn't filling my life with the truth. Lies like I could do it all by myself because I was the independent woman our culture so esteems. Or if I just put in enough effort, everything should run perfectly and be perfect because I had put in the work to keep everything under control. Or my biggest and hardest lie I had to face, that I couldn't let people close to me because anyone I let close to me either died or would leave me. And in the midst of all this questioning and uncertainty, I found a little book at the Goodwill bins, of all places, called Take Back Your Joy, Fighting for Purpose When Life is More Than You Can Handle. As I read each chapter about staying grounded in the Word, believing the truth about God, forgiving others, serving, and finding purpose in the pain of life, it helps me to start reframe who I was as a child of God in tangible, real-life, step-by-step ways. The Psalms also became a big part of this process. You see, when you start to really engage in healing the deep parts of you, reframing incorrect thought patterns, lies, putting off the old man and putting on the new man, and pruning the dead branches away, it's painful. It's so painful at times. And the Psalms became so real on those days. I started to pray the Psalms, especially on days when I couldn't get out of my own head and the lies, anxieties, and fears seemed to encompass me like a great shadow or a dark cloud. And in praying the Psalms, I found that men years ago struggled with the same things I was working through. They prayed similar prayers that touched the depths of my soul's wrestling and desire and put to words things that were in my head that I had fought so long to fully get out. The Psalms became my deepest soul's cry. But one psalm that I had memorized front and back from the earliest of ages kept coming back. Psalm 23. The New Living Translation has been instrumental in my renewed walk with God this year, and the way it translates Psalms 23:1 was the exact truth that I needed to grasp at my core this year. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. Period, point blank. I didn't need an identity in anything else. I didn't need to keep striving in order to prove that I was worthy of God or anybody else's love. I didn't have to perform to gain the approval of the God who ultimately saw every hidden motive in my heart. I couldn't control anything. And honestly, what did it matter if man left me? The Lord was my shepherd. And that's all I needed for today, for tomorrow, for the rest of my life. And I got to revel in that truth by stepping back and realizing this fact instead of plowing forward, staying busy, being all things to all men at the detriment of my own health and well-being. He let me rest in green pastures. As I woke up and enjoyed treasured slow mornings in the Word and in prayer, He led me beside peaceful streams as I found rhythm in just being in His presence and working through my hurt with Him. He renewed my strength to start getting back to serving, connecting, and encouraging others in small ways. He has guided me along right paths and brought me back to Himself to bring honor to His name alone. About halfway through this process back in March, I had the opportunity to go to a youth workers conference down at the Wilds of North Carolina. The topics were what ultimately drew me to want to attend: depression and anxiety. Two things that are so prevalent in our world today, not only for teens, but also for everyone else. That weekend and the week following was one of the most uplifting, eye-opening, and encouraging times this year. But as soon as I got back, I plunged into a deep sadness I had not experienced before. And during that time, even though I walked through what seemed like the darkest valley, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, as God continued to prune me and expose the deep darkness in my own heart, and as I grieved people, identities, and ideologies I had held onto for years, I experienced the closeness of the Lord as His rod and His staff protected and comforted me on the days where all I could do was cry, lament, read my Bible, listen to sermons, and put one foot in front of the other. He was with me. And in that daily surrender, I found that He has prepared a feast for me, a feast of truth and peace and joy in the presence of an enemy who tries so often to get me discouraged and back off the path. He anoints my head with the oil of truth to combat the enemy's lies as I seek the truth of life found in His word and the healing that continues to mend every wound the enemy has created in me. And I am now so aware of how my cup runs over with blessings. I've learned the power of thankfulness in prayer that Philippians 4 so clearly points out, because focusing on blessings instead of dwelling on the distractions daily is a powerful weapon. And the last verse gets me every time, because I wouldn't be up here proclaiming this if God's goodness and if His mercy hadn't pursued me all the days of my life. If my God hadn't pursued me, I would not have been able to experience the overwhelming joy and peace that comes with a true relationship with Him. Just the other week, I read something in a book that resonated so deeply in my soul. We were made to worship. And often we worship the things we do or are or have or try to be for others, but our true purpose and the reason we exist is to worship our Creator and faithful Shepherd. So now I'm daily living in the truth that I am God's child. I'm learning to obey Him in the little and the big ways as I yield to the Holy Spirit's continued work in my life. My identity is fully wrapped around Him, around the fact that I am His and He is mine. He knows me inside and out. I don't have to pretend with Him or clean myself up. He chose me. And because of that, I will dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. That hope gets me through the hard days and gives me purpose to keep following my good shepherd each day, whether it be by the still and peaceful streams or in the darkest of valleys. So when the sign-up went out for NBC and stewardship was being discussed in Sunday school and doing a VBS for our missions trip was on the table, I felt the Holy Spirit nudging me to possibly take the role of teacher this year. Holly graciously gave me the teaching materials to look over, And let me tell you, when I saw Psalm 23 on the cover, I lost it. How could I not proclaim the goodness God had shown me all year, using a passage that had become so rich and alive to me? And even through preparing for the teaching each day, the Spirit continued to prune and root out parts deep within me that still needed healing. Because I'm learning my shepherd is out for full, complete restoration of my heart, soul, and mind. And I sat with that in the light of God's word, praying through the Psalms yet again. And instead of teaching in my own power, as I had done for so many years, I got to experience the absolute joy of teaching through my shepherd's loving guidance. So here I stand, a broken vessel, a branch that's been pruned at times to what felt like the last living green thing on the vine, a dumb sheep in need of a gracious, loving, good shepherd who has pursued me even though I wandered so far away so many times, who has chosen me, even though I didn't initially choose him, and who loves me and knows me deeper than any human being ever could. And because of him, I can boldly and confidently say to you today, the Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Cherry. Thank you again for being here this evening. We're looking forward to, again, just sharing what God is doing in Alaska and learning what he's doing in Alaska, because we're about to find out. We don't exactly know what to expect, but we're excited to see what God's doing there. And Pastor Kyle asked me to share with you a little bit of how short-term missions has kind of shaped my life and how it's been a major tool in what God's done in my life, and then what mission trips look like kind of from both sides, as a missionary on the field receiving a team, and then as someone who's going, having that opportunity and experience, and then why this is a benefit to the church as a whole. So as we kind of shift into that, has anyone been on a short-term trip or traveled internationally? Had opportunities? One or two people maybe want to share maybe a blessing or something they experienced on a trip, where they went, a blessing from that trip. Declan? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Sarah?
I was able to go to Ukraine in college for a month, and it was really great for me to get outside of my little bubble of New England and to experience the global church and see how though people and cultures and land and everything can be different, that the body of Christ is the same the world around. And that was good for me to expand my view.
Yeah, okay. Great, thank you. Someone else? Yes, please.
It's kind of similar to what Sarah said, but I really love seeing the way that people in different places worship. Elements are the same, but the way that it plays out is different, and it's just really beautiful to see the way that they do it within their culture. I went to Ghana, and the services were similarly structured in some ways, but the style of worship was totally different, but just the joy that they had, and it was just, I don't know, it was good to get out of my mind of, Western church is not actually, that they'll be all. It was encouraging to see the way that God works and the way that his people worship him all over.
Yeah, okay, got it. Someone else? Sarah?
Part of the trip through Europe, spent a few weeks in Russia with churches whose pastors had been through serious persecution, and watching how they valued and treasured their time together and the Word of God, and held on to that as something even more important, listening to them pray that the Lord would send persecution again, if that's what it would take to keep their children right in his will. That kind of mentality was stunning.
Someone else? No, Declan. These opportunities are just very helpful in getting a broad vision of the church. oftentimes we feel like, or we believe that this is normal. This is what church looks like around the world. This is what we've grown up in. This is what we do every week. So this must be what church looks like on a global scale. And if you traveled internationally, you know that's not true. And it's actually very interesting, and it's a blessing to sit in different worship services in different cultures, in different countries, sometimes with different languages. And it's a blessing to still to have that unity in Christ with all those differences, to come down to that unity in Christ. I would like to share a little bit of my story, not that it's all that interesting, but it's the story God's given me and the experiences he's allowed me to have. And I just want to share those with you and how that missions has influenced my life. So I grew up in Michigan in a very missions-minded church. All through my teenage years, our church had mission trips. My first mission trip was to Puerto Rico. My second one was to Brazil. Went for a couple weeks to Brazil. And after that, I think after that it was Spain. And then Tanzania, over just south of Kenya. That was probably the most interesting mission trip I took. And when you think of mission trips, you're usually thinking of like things you're going to do. It's a to-do list of things we're going to help. And this was an interesting trip because the Lord had been stirring a desire, an interest in cross-cultural ministry. I just had really enjoyed that, and just learning about other cultures and taking the gospel in other cultures. It just really had sparked an interest in me. And when we went to Africa, we think to ourselves, okay, what are we going to do for these people to help them, these poor people? And when we got there, the missionary said, no, here's what you're going to do. For the first couple of days, you're going to sit in a classroom, and I'm going to have one of the African men teach you Swahili and teach you some customs and teach you about their culture. And so while we're there, we would sit in class in the morning, and they would teach us phrases in Swahili. And we would learn what would it be like to try to live in this culture and to just change the way you think entirely and the way you interact with people. And then they would send us to the marketplace to barter in Swahili for certain things. Like this was not what I came to do. I came to help, win the lost. No, we're going to learn about missions on a mission field, and this is more almost for my benefit than it benefited me more than I think that I benefited them, right? So that was a great opportunity to learn missions from that perspective and that angle. After that, I think it was my high school class, Christian school, our senior trip, we toured Europe for 2 weeks. I don't think they do that anymore. But we went to Europe, and we got a bus, and we drove around from France, Italy, Austria, Switzerland, Germany, stopping in all kinds of places, seeing different ministries, seeing different cultures. And it just was really a desire of mine to just be involved in a cross-cultural ministry. So when it got time to go to college, I talked to my parents, talked to my pastor, talked to some missionaries, and I just really wanted to be involved in some type of missions. And they said, well, maybe you should study something in college that you can use on a mission field as a tool to build bridges. They suggested either English or something in medicine. I chose something in medicine. Nothing against English. I just chose something in medicine. Let's go there. Okay. So I went to nursing school for the purpose of using that as a tool in missions. That's just where the Lord directed me in that. And then while I was in nursing school, I met Kara, and we were married after we graduated. And then we joined a mission agency, and we ended up going to a country called Papua New Guinea. So they were looking to open a medical clinic out in kind of a jungle, tribal area that was really an outreach to the community to build bridges and to really show the love of Christ in a physical way. And so we went there, and I could talk about that for a really long time. So I'll try to summarize that up, but we were with the mission agency for maybe 5 or 6 years. We spent about 2 years in the country of Papua New Guinea. And then the other years we spent actually traveling around the country, speaking in many, many churches, and just sharing what God is doing on the other side of the world. Kind of, I would say, I'm opening a window for you. I want you to see what God's doing over here, because you're just not exposed to that. You don't have that opportunity. And so we would love to share with you what God is doing there. And it encourages the church to see what God is doing on a global scale. Sometimes we just don't see that because it's not right in front of us as much. So we were able to do that. We actually spoke here a couple of times. Pastor Pelletier was here one time we spoke, which was, 10, 15 years ago. We came through here a couple of times and spoke at the church here. Again, I could talk about that quite a bit. So I didn't tell my family this, but just for the sake of embarrassment, I have a few pictures. These pictures are like 10 years old, okay? So this was us going to Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea is the island right above Australia, and really we had the opportunity to join a team there and live out in the jungle. So you'd fly in a helicopter out to a village, and they would live on the tops of these mountains out there in the village. They didn't have access to healthcare. They obviously didn't also have access to literature or literacy, able to read. So we had a Christian school there, teaching them to read, using the Bible as a textbook, and able to help just from lots of angles, getting the gospel to them through the love of Christ, even in medicine, through teaching them to read so they can actually open a Bible. There was a church planter there as well who focused on discipleship and training some of the nationals as well. Just trying from several different ways to get into the hearts of these people, the gospel. And so this was the opportunity to do that. Very friendly people for the most part, very fun-loving people of Papua New Guinea. Again, very high up in the mountains. This is carrying Emily, Isabel, walking to church down through the mountains. This is me and some of my friends. I'm the one in the middle. Looks like Waldo. That's right. But we had this is our medical clinic waiting room. So we would see people and they would come and we would be able to build relationships with them and hopefully be able to share the gospel with them more openly with that relationship. We were also involved in training some of the pastors in the town. This was Pastor Jimmy and some other pastors who served faithfully there for a long time. So just like the Lord was able to give us that opportunity to work there for a couple of years. This was the main church that we were part of. And it was just, again, an opportunity to serve and to see what God's doing in other parts of the world. And again, we could talk about that for a long time. If you have questions, it's one of my favorite topics. I could talk about that. But the opportunity to take the gospel into a culture where they're not able to read it, they don't have access to it. Access is a big thing for some people with the gospel. And the opportunity to connect with people in that way. So where does that go in with short-term mission trips, right? We have the opportunity to maybe go to Honduras or go to Alaska as a church family. Why would we do that? As Pastor mentioned this morning, why don't we just take the money and send it to them? Or why would we spend that money to do something like this? As Pastor also said, God's not limited by resources. And so if there's an opportunity to do something like this, I don't know if money should be the main motivating factor of, well, we shouldn't do that because it costs money. If God's calling us to do something and giving us an opportunity, let's pursue that and pray about that. Because, as some of you mentioned, going to these places, having those experiences, seeing the people, seeing the cultures, interacting with them, it's a huge blessing for you personally, but also it's an encouragement to the church body as a whole. So I have a couple thoughts about just kind of encapsulating some of the benefits and blessings of short-term mission trips. And the one's been mentioned a few times, and that's just encouraging the missionaries. There's nothing like being a missionary. You're isolated, you're there. Alaska's a little different than New Guinea, a little bit. But there's some similarities. Actually, we could only get to our village by helicopter or airplane, and it seems to be the same with Iliamna. But you can feel isolated, you can feel very alone, and it's a little bit of a different culture. And so to have someone that invests in you and comes and takes a genuine interest in you and your ministry, sits down at your table with you, interacts with your children, goes to your church, meets your people, all of those things, there's something about that you can't get through an email or through a FaceTime or something. I was thinking about our studies in 2nd and 3rd John, where he says, I want to write to you, but I want to see you face to face. I want that Paul says this too. I want to come and I want to see you. There's something about that face-to-face interaction that is just a blessing and encouragement, especially to a missionary who is really giving their lives for this mission. And we're partnering with them, and it's such an encouragement to them to receive someone and to show them what God is allowing them to be a part of. Look what God's doing here. I get to show you that. When we were in Papua New Guinea, We had a couple, Dr. Bob Jones III and his wife, came and visited us and stayed in our house, which is a little intimidating if you know who they are, but also was really encouraging because they were just so full of encouragement, and they wanted to know all the things, and they wanted to meet the people and go to the church, and they wanted to see. It was just such an encouragement for us, for someone like that to take an interest in the ministry and to come and to meet the people and to shake their hands and to eat the food and all of those things. It was a blessing and encouragement for us. And so I think somewhere we actually have a picture of like Dr. Bob pushing Isabel in a swing somewhere out in the jungle. Just have to find that somewhere. It's a blessing. And it also validates the ministry to the locals sometimes. If you have someone who comes and says, these people that are here, that live here, they represent us. They're an extension of who we are. There is a large support system underneath this couple. And it's going to validate their ministry to the people by showing there's weightiness here. There's something behind this. There's a group that is investing in this. And there's a little bit of a validity to the missionaries and their ministry in the eyes of some of the culture. Something else I thought of was the fact that we committed to supporting the houses, or missionaries in general. We've committed to supporting them. They've committed to being there. We've committed to supporting them. That's not just financially and prayer. That could be energy and time. We can go and we can give them energy, and we can give them time, and we can shoulder things with them just for a small window. But it's an encouragement to them to do that. It's not just an encouragement to the missionaries, though. It is actually an encouragement to us as well. When you get to go to a field like that and you get to see it and experience it, shake the hands, and just experience that ministry, that's an encouragement to the team. It's also hopefully an encouragement to the church, the sending churches, to hear back a report of what God's doing through us in that culture. In that city. We are partners with them. It's an encouragement for the missionary, it's encouragement for the team, it's encouragement for the church. All of those things together. So encouragement's a major part of these short-term trips. Another major part, I would say, is exposure. Exposing ourselves to another ministry, usually a cross-cultural ministry in short-term missions. A lot of missionaries right now that are on the fields all over the world, they started, or they got their feet wet by short-term mission trips. They went on trips, and that's how they see the need. You can hear about it, you can read about it, but going and actually seeing it, being part of it, there's a deal of exposure and seeing it and learning about it firsthand, eating the food, smelling the smells, meeting the people. There's a degree of which that exposure for us is a good thing, because sometimes we can get narrow in our vision of the church global and the mission global. It doesn't mean that we're all going to become full-time missionaries, but it means that maybe we'll be more on mission even as a church. Most missionaries currently on the field were exposed to ministry through short-term missions as well. It's good for the church. It's good for the church to invest and to be involved outside of their own community, and to be able to be involved in seeing what God is doing on a global scale. So to encourage the missionaries, to be able to be exposed to what God is doing, even ourselves to be able to see that. And then third, to evangelize, right? That's what we're going to do. Hopefully, we're spreading the gospel. That's part of this Great Commission, is that we are going to shoulder that burden with them. We're going to partner with them in evangelizing and helping them to spread the gospel where God has planted them. And we have agreed to partner with them in that. And that might look like going and putting energy into the interactions with the people that they interact with and they rub shoulders with. So in part also to participate in the Great Commission and help them in that, just for a small window. But it gives us an exposure to them. Hopefully it encourages them, and it gives us the opportunity to be involved in evangelism with them. So mission trips aren't always about just the task we go to accomplish. It's also what God is teaching us and doing through us. When we first went to Papua New Guinea, we had all the ideas of what we're gonna change. We're gonna save them all, right? And a missionary said to me, God will probably do more in you than he'll do through you. And I just thought, well, that's interesting. Okay, 100%. I don't know if there's any, I don't know what's going on there right now, but I know what God did in us through that opportunity is life-changing. And what God does in you is often more important than what you think he's going to do through you. So we're praying this opportunity is going to be growing for us, for the church as a family, and also that we can be an encouragement to them. So we'll pray for those things, and we appreciate your prayers to that end. All right. Questions? Or do we either we get to this point and we've answered everything, or you have so many questions that you don't know where to start. So we'll just go there. Does anyone have a specific question or something that they're curious about for the trip? For anyone on the team, I'll open that up. Pick anybody on the team. Yes, sir.
I guess this one is for Isabel. Do you remember Papua New Guinea?
It's very hard to distinguish the memories from pictures, but I would say I remember more than Emily does. So,
That's fair.
I remember bits and pieces. I remember going to a fish market, and it smelled so bad. That was one of my...
We're going to Alaska. There's going to be fish. So-
I'm sure I'll experience lots of freedom. But that was one of my biggest memories. I don't really remember much. Again, the pictures, I don't get those. So.
Anyone else? While you're stirring on that, I was looking this morning trying to think of what other ministries might be in Iliamna. So I was Googling churches in Iliamna. 2 came up. The Church for the Houses and the Russian Orthodox Church. Alaska, obviously we purchased from Russia. There's actually a presence still there of the Russian Orthodox Church. So that would be just an interesting interaction. I have not interacted much with that. Any other questions about the trip, the team, VBS? Yes?
Do you know how big of a city or town Ileana is?
I don't have a population.
How many people in their church? Kids?
They said that for VBS we should anticipate maybe 25 kids. Yes?
So VBS for the community kids, like are they inviting anyone from the community?
Yes, that's correct. Yes. We're specifically going before schools. I guess the start of school is pretty close, so we purposely were trying to go before school started. And that also depends on when fishing season ends, apparently. The school year is based on the fishing season. But we made that window in there between those so that the community could all be involved. Yes, sir? Have they done them before? I believe so.
They have a regular kids club they run.
Yes.
That feeds into this.
Okay. Right. All right, any other questions? No? All right, well, we'll be around, so feel free to snag anybody, and thank you again for your prayers, Pastor.
Yeah, the team was asking the houses if they'd be doing any kind of canvassing for VBS, and Aaron said, no, it's small enough town. He said, we have all the kids pretty much coming regularly to our regular Bible club, and so we just spread the word to 1 or 2, and it gets to everyone. So that's a little different perhaps as well. Really thank you for your time, Charity and Eric, for putting the time into this, and really been encouraged with how God's brought that together for their leadership of this, and then each one of the team and their willingness to participate in this way. Really appreciate Eric's thoughts on the benefit and the blessing of this. I've through the years, this has been something the Lord has kind of worked, and I would say it's just grown even more and more a conviction. I don't want to have more missionaries that we support than we can actively be engaged with. We have missionaries we throw money to on a regular basis, but we have no idea who they are. They're just kind of names that we are aware of, and oh yeah, they're so-and-so over somewhere. That's not good. I'd rather have a few missionaries that we know well and that we are plugged into. And I think this is part of that, right? Having those times of engagement and encouragement that way. The team will report back, so keep that in mind. Sometime probably September at this point, by the time they get back and get their wits about them. So we'll have another report from them about how things go, and we will have some others speak as well. I'm just going to put that out already in advance. Don't look terrified. It's all right. You did great tonight. Thank you, Charity, for your testimony, and pray for Isabel. I want to close tonight by just asking. I'm going to ask this. We have a kind of a send-off Sunday coming up, August 16th. We'll have the director of IBM Global here to preach the morning service, and a little bit of a send-off that day. That will be the Sunday before they leave. But I'm just going to ask that I'm going to kind of list off each person on the team. And I want to ask for at least one volunteer to just say, I'm going to commit to pray for that person from now until the team gets back in August. And pray for some of the things that were mentioned. Pray for the Lord to be doing a work in preparation and for just the growth and the work God would do. So kind of just starting from this end. We've got Steve and Miko. Someone willing to say, I will commit to praying for Stephen. All right, Bill. And others are welcome to as well, but I just want to get at least one person paired up with each one. Ethan Wilcox, someone to take him. All right, Mark. Isaiah McAllister. Greg, all right. Kaylin Kuchar. All right, we've got Carlene Hicks. Isabel Dupre. All right, Tara. Eric Dupre. Dan Harlan, all right. Phil Rush. Josiah. And Charity Rush. Holly, all right. Others can jump in too, feel free. Jot a name down, just pick someone out. But I would encourage you, even take a chance to just say, hey, how can I be praying? Anything specific I can pray for you about, and take that opportunity. We're grateful for this, and God is good to give some great opportunities here.